The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
This one is a little longer in what I'm going to be talking about because it covers a couple different things. First of all, consistency just means, same operation should work the same way. Don't make it that quitting an application is sometimes, Control X, sometimes Control E, sometimes Alt F4 or whatever. This used to be a wonderful problem in early days of Windows and Unix systems. That you had all kinds of different ways of quitting an application, and you had to remember which one each used, and that's just unnecessary. But it's not just that for commands, but it's also the terminology you use. If you use a word in a menu, use it in dialogues, use it in online help, etc. Use it in your documentation. And it goes beyond word choice. It also touches on visual consistency, right? It looks terrible if you use lots of different fonts or different designs or color schemes in your application that don't match each other and that don't repeat themselves in a predictable way. I can show you an interface that just uses wrong upper lowercase settings, and you will look at it and it will somehow seem unprofessional. Sometimes you can't even say why, but it just looks careless. So those are small things, but uppercasing, lowercasing commands in menus is something that will speak to your users whether you took care or not. There are some exceptions for consistency. For example, you always provide a clear text echo when somebody presses a key. Always something clearly happens. But if you enter a password, well, you're not showing the text, of course, in clear text. Or you always have commands execute immediately, but if somebody wants to actually erase a file that is not retrievable, you provide an extra safety warning and ask them once more. We'll get to the fact whether those extra warnings really work, but that's at least something you can do. Let me show you an example that you guys should know, because from the history class, you might remember the Xerox star. Right? And one of the things that it had was physical buttons that were enabled, like delete, copy, move, properties, open, stuff like this. Find, same, I think. So these physical buttons would do the same thing, for example, moving, whether you want, or copying, whether you wanted to copy a file, a word in a text editor, an object in a graphics program, or whatever. That's still true today. We don't have the physical buttons anymore, but we do have the command or Control-C, Control-X, Control-V commands to do these operations all over our systems. So good idea, right? That makes it easy. If I know where the copy command is for one application, I know where it is for every application. That's consistency. Also predictability. Now, there is one mean trick you can pull in order to make consistency much easier for you. It doesn't always work, but sometimes you're in a situation where it might work. And that is by taking over the design of both the hardware, the operating system, the applications, and the software user interface all under one roof. And systems like OS X or the iPhone or TomTom navigation systems, I think, are a great example too. They have everything under one roof, right? So the guy who's designing the hardware for a TomTom navigator can talk to the guy who's designing the software for it or the user interface, and they can work out how they're going to make things consistent. Like, I don't know, I have a button up here, and if I press that, something should happen in the UI, and it should always be shown like this. They can make these arrangements because it's all done out of one hand. If you are, on the other hand, facing the horizontal design approach that a lot of industries also face, for example, Android phones are a typical example these days, or Windows PCs are the same situation. The hardware comes from a variety of different vendors that build different specs, different screen sizes, in the case of Android, for example. And then comes the OS that is supposed to make all of these sort of the same. And then comes the applications, and even the core applications, sometimes not even provided by the same vendor as the OS, but by other vendors. And that is just a hell of a lot more difficult to keep consistent. Right? How am I going to make sure that all the applications use that home or back button consistently if I'm not in control of these applications. So vertical design isn't always an option. If you're just writing an app for a phone, you got to live with the hardware that's there, right? You can't change it. But if you get to the chance to design a new consumer product, that includes hardware, you can grab that chance and actually make wonderful consistency. Look at new devices that come out, like consumer electronics and Nest thermostats, those kinds of things. They have a chance of getting the interface right because hardware and software are all being designed in hand. And that's a great situation to be in for a consistent design. Predictability, I said be consistent and predictable. There's still rule number 3 here, right? Predictability means following what I like to call the principle of least surprise. That's a wonderful principle. Every time you make a design decision, just ask yourself, which of these alternatives would surprise the user the least? And that's the one you go for. Because a user interface is not a text adventure, right, where you want to be surprised by an ogre running down the hall. You want not to be surprised. And you want to know what's going to happen. You want the system to follow expectations and to do the things that you expect it to do. Because surprise in the user when he's using an application usually comes right before confusion and irritation. So don't do unexpected things, right? Don't suddenly pop up a dialogue of some sort in the middle of something else. Also, it means don't make actions unexpectedly difficult, right? For example, a photocopier that makes it terribly hard to copy a page in duplex rather than single side mode is not a good design. Again, it depends on the users and the tasks they want to do most frequently. But predictability has something else. There's something subtle in our minds, which is we like to be in control. When we use a tool, and the tool does the things that we want it to do, it follows our intents, and it does the job right, we almost forget about the tool, and we feel like we're mastering the tool, we're mastering the craft, we're doing a task that's very satisfying. If the tool gets on our nerves and is unpredictable and does things in a weird way, then I feel incompetent, doing the task, especially if I'm doing it in front of others. Like if this thing decided every 7 minutes, the button direction gets reversed, I would look like an idiot, pressing wrong buttons in front of you guys. Right? So people like to be in control. They initiate actions, the system responds. That's how you like to use your computer, like a well-oiled machine that responds to every single command. So the principle of least surprise is really important. For example, for a while I saw this popping up every now and then. People would do a presentation, and in the middle of the presentation, like in this setting here today, boop, this dialog would pop up, telling them that, hey, by the way, here's your laptop, here's your operating system, your battery is now fully charged. That's kind of annoying, because when I'm presenting, that's not something I want to share with everybody in the room. I'm not even interested myself at that point. It almost reminds me of, I don't know whether you guys still know this. Does that ring a bell? Clippy? Oh, yeah, it still does. Awesome. Right. Clippy, your office assistant. The one thing that was all over the internet, back then was, how do I get rid of Clippy? Right? How do I uninstall it? How do I turn it off? Why? Because you were typing a letter, you wrote like, Dear Henry, comma, and then it would pop up and say, hey, it looks like you want to write a letter. Would you like some help? People always say computers should act more like humans, and they should have these, human, competencies. In this case, I think if computers work like that, they are like a human, but they're like an annoying little kid. There's like, oh, I got to say something to you, and I want to say it now, and I don't care whether you're listening or not, or whether you have something else to do. I want to tell you now, Mommy. That's not the way you want your computer to come across as a personality. If anything, if I had a choice and my computer was supposed to be a person, I'd like it more to be like a butler, who would be standing over there, and if my battery is fully charged, he would say nothing because he knows I'm giving a presentation. Then after I walk off the stage, he'd be like, excuse me, sir, your battery, by the way, is now fully charged. That's the right way, right? Be a servant, not an annoying little tyrant. I got to show you a little more about the PowerPoint Office Assistant, like this little clippy thing there, because I was surprised how insidious it was. You would think, it would appear like this, and then you're like, no, I don't want help, go away, and that was it, but not always. If you were entering a slideshow in PowerPoint on the Mac a couple versions ago, and you would click on something that you couldn't change on the slide because it was part of the master slide design. You couldn't do that, right? You had to go to the master slides. Clippy would appear and would say, this is an object on the master. The object you're trying to select is on the slide master, not on the cursor. That's good. Thank you. That's helpful. Now, it had these things, these tiny little blue, and to this day, I don't know whether they were buttons or radio or what they were. They were a completely unexistent user interface component in the rest of the macOS design back then. This I recognize. That's the checkbox. But it said, like, take me to the slide master, and it wasn't clear, like, do I pick this or not? Or tell me about the slide master. And then came this cryptic thing, thanks for the tip. And now you know how people like to make mental models, right, of stuff, whether it makes sense or not. My mental model was like, if I ever check that, it's never going to go away again. It's going to bug me all the time. So the one I was missing here was like, go away and don't come back. That wasn't there. But you're in a hurry, 10 minutes to your talk, you need to fix your presentation, this thing pops up. You're like, whatever, go away, right? You just want this thing to go away, so you click OK, because that's the only thing that seems to be able to get rid of this thing, or you try to close this button here. That's the button, actually. Then something else happened. Then it would say, sorry, you must click an option before you can close the assistant. And then you had to first click OK here, and then go back to this, and then pick an option, then click OK before helpful Clippy went away. So not surprising that people try to get rid of this thing, right? Because it is really not at all, it's very surprising, right? So principle of least surprise is clearly broken here. And it's really annoying people and throwing them off their game. A corollary, if you like, to the problems of surprise are timeouts. And allow me to just go on a 5-minute rant about timeouts, right? Timeouts are always evil. Whenever you have a timeout in your user interface, it's going to mess with the user. Has anybody ever tried to book a ticket on the online Deutsche Bahn website, and you found your connection, and you found your perfect seat, and now it's asking you for payment details? So you go over to your bedroom, you find your credit card, whatever, you come back, and there's a phone call, you need to answer that, and you go back, and you're like, it actually still lets you fill in all the credit card details, and then when you hit submit, it says like, oh, I'm sorry, that session, what were you thinking? That's expired. And by the way, I've forgotten everything you chose, and you got to start from scratch, right? That's annoying, right? That's a timeout. So timeouts are evil. This is a great one. It's an emergency exit that says, press the bar for 3 seconds in order to leave the raging fire that is, going on behind you. And the door lock will then release after 15 seconds while you're waiting for the fire to, consume you. Not a good idea, right? Another example of timeouts is, radios that have the station search function, where you you want to find a station that plays some excellent country music, let's say, right? You're a country fan. So you're going down the road and you hit that button, find me some country music. And it goes through the various stations. It plays each station for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then it continues on unless you press a button to say, yeah, that's the one I want, right? So here you are driving and the search is going on. Now you get to, the whatever, Hansemannplatz or something. So you got to take a sharp left. And at that very moment when you want to take that sharp left, your station comes on. So you got 2 choices now. You can, defy gravity and the laws of physics and try to take that left turn, with one hand on the steering wheel and use the other hand to stop the search before it moves on to the next station. Or you can drive around like, your driving instructor told you, both hands on the steering wheel, take the turn, do everything you have to do, and then you have to listen to all the stations one more time until your country station comes around again. And that second time, it will do a more exhaustive search with all the local stations as well, because obviously it didn't find the one the first time. So that's also a timeout. The first example I gave you was one where the system, after a while of you not being active, just basically threw away your data and made you come back to the system. The second one also decided, oh, if you haven't, in the next 5 seconds, you need to do something, otherwise I'm going to make a decision for you. If somebody says this to you, hey, do you want to go for dinner? You got 5 seconds. If you don't make a decision, I'll decide for you. That's not very nice, right? That's how the computers then work all the time. Or, let me see whether you guys still know this one. Do you remember the times, okay, before smartphones, there was dumb phones, and you would type, and that was T9 text correction. Before T9 text correction, there was multi-tab. Multi-tab, and sometimes you still have that on like whatever, cordless phones or something. You have to type a number several times to get the letter, right? So for a P, you would press, I don't know, key number 6, whatever, like 1 time. For the Q, you have to press 2 times. For the R, you have to press 3 times, that kind of stuff. Does anybody use this and remember one of the most annoying things about multi-tab?
It was hard to enter the same letter twice because you had to wait for the timeout and then type the code again because else it changed the letter you previously typed.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm referring to. You have to wait. If you wanted to type 2 P's after each other, you had to wait for the first P to appear and the timeout to expire, and then you could hit the letter again. Otherwise, you would be clicking through the various options on that number key. I know people, including myself, to be honest, who would press P, then press any other key, then hit the delete key, and then hit P again, just to get rid of the stupid. And we're talking about, like, what, half a second maybe or something? So this is the tiniest of timeouts, and it still annoys the hell out of people. That's why timeouts are always a huge problem in your interface, so be careful about them. To go back to our bifurcated interface, or the interface that didn't require a delimiter key anymore, that's one that would maybe could use a timeout in order to say, oh, so that you don't need to erase all the the numbers in my editing field. I do that for you after whatever 10 seconds, but we would get into this really gooey area of timeouts. So dangerous space to be. All right, that's enough about be consistent and predictable and don't do timeouts.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.